What if I told you that the secret to a killer professional sounding mix has almost nothing to do with mixing? And what if I told you that all those fancy plugins and all those clickbait YouTube tutorials like the only low end trick you need and the mix hack the pros use are probably a giant waste of your time? Well, in this video we'll share the real secret to a great sounding mix. We'll be getting advice from a real pro, Stefano Civetta, a renowned recording and mixing engineer who has many years experience under his belt, both at Abbey Road Studios and here at School Farm Studios, and has worked on thousands of tracks from artists such as Ed Sheeran and Nile Rodgers to major Hollywood film scores and everything in between. There's also a free pack of goodies that accompany this video that goes into even more depth and walks you through my mix of a track recorded right here at School Farm Studios at our workshop with Nick Kershaw a while ago, and you can download that for free by clicking the link in the description. But to make sense of that, it's important you watch this video first, so resist the dopamine hit of free downloads until the end if you can. Your camera's on, I'm watching you. For 25 years I've been mastering records. I get tracks from major labels, top producers and mix engineers that barely need touching. But I also get tracks from, well, let's just say less experienced folk, and often after 5 seconds of listening I know I need to schedule an awkward video call which usually goes something like this.
Your mix is absolutely f***ing shit.
The problem is almost always the same, and I've done it countless times myself. You fall into the fix it in the mix trap. You know the problem, your snare sounds duller than a monotone podcast about the history of beige paint.
And so you apply the EQ trick you saw on the internet, but then the transients are too harsh in the top end. So you compress it, and then compress it again because that's what someone did in a video.
The first plugin tries to fix a problem but creates a new one, and then the next 14 plugins are all trying to fix the problem created by the last fix. And so your mix sounds harsh, it lacks clarity, lacks punch, and sounds about as exciting as the Tuesday afternoon video call with the accountant's office that I've got in 20 minutes. Well, there's a real trick the pros use, and it's really easy to grasp and could mean the difference between your record being a massive flop or a massive hit. So stick with it. Come on people, we can do this. The real secret is so simple you'll kick yourself, and I hear it every time I go to a mix workshop with a famous engineer. It's okay for them, they've got great sounding multi-tracks to start with. Yeah, the pros track sounds amazing before they even touch a single plugin. You could just push the faders up, do a little panning, and boom, a great mix. And that's generally what happens when I mix something that was recorded here. But how do you get that great starting point? Well, the first thing we may need to address was the root of all of my production problems for years when I first started out. My songs were crap and my arrangements weren't very good. Nailing this might not be as fun as buying a new plugin, but it is critical, and it's actually the biggest time saver of all, and something that some of the best producers I have worked with all have in common. They do the vast majority of their work in the rehearsal room. For a great example of how a good arrangement can make a huge difference to the mix, listen to that famous Phil Collins drum fill. You know the one? Yeah. That's it. There are two reasons why that sounds so huge, but the really important reason is that there's room for Phil's fill in the arrangement. When he thumps those tubs, dressed up as a gorilla or not, there's nothing else going on, and the drums stand out and take the spotlight. The second thing, the thing Hugh Padgham famously did with the SSL Listen mic compressor, only enhances that, but the real magic stems from the arrangement. Drop that fill into a busy song with loud guitars and screaming vocals and it will sound tiny and disappear. And that's where the starting point for a great mix comes from. The mix enhances a great recording of a great performance of a well-arranged, fantastic song. You can download the Listen mic compressor plugin from SSL, but it won't make your fill feel like Phil's fill. Stupid English. When I opened my first studio back in the days when we were recording to Wax Cylinder, I was recording mainly local bands. They'd book in for a day, set up as quickly as possible, bash out as many songs as they could, and then I'd be left to mix it. And this would often take weeks and would be hell, and the mixes would be shit. And so I stopped doing that and started taking on more of a production role, and I educated myself based on how I'd seen other producers work. I'd start encouraging the band to come and rehearse with us in the days leading up to the tracking session, and this enabled me to get to know the band, work with them to tweak the songs, arrangements and instrumentation, but it also enabled me to mic them up, get them used to wearing headphones in the studio, and experiment with microphone choices and positioning while everyone was working out different approaches to the song. Would the energy be better if the song was performed live, or would it be better if we tracked the drums first and then built everything else up around those? This approach always led to a well-rehearsed, stress-free band that were comfortable in the studio, had their parts nailed, and achieved much better recordings as a result. It meant that a faders plus panning mix sounded fantastic, and that led to better monitor mixes for the band, which resulted in better performances, and a positively reinforcing cycle was established. And guess what? Then the final mixes sounded fantastic, were pretty much there on the day, and needed very little doing to get them up to a professional level. But it also taught me the one other very important thing that many happy hours spent working with Stefano here at School Farm has strongly reinforced. And this is where it starts to get a little bit controversial. Your microphone choice. Here we go, Mark's moans. How many times have you seen one of these on a podcast on YouTube? Is it because it's the best microphone for the job? No, to my ears it just sounds, well, a bit lifeless. But Michael Jackson used one on Thriller. Yes, he did, and he did a lot of other things as well, but you didn't copy those, did you? I'd choose a condenser over a dynamic for a podcast every time, and so do most major radio stations. So why are these so ubiquitous? Well, it's because we live in the age of visual media, and some very famous podcast channels started using them, and the world watched. And if you start using them, then maybe it'll put your podcast in the league of the Joe Rogans or Stephen Bartletts of this world. Us humans like familiarity, we like a trend, and if someone successful uses a certain something, we often think that maybe we'll have a chance of that success if we do too. But my advice is to experiment. I once had a drummer suggest I try a small diaphragm condenser, you know, the type of mic you're supposed to use on delicate acoustic guitars and Sparrow's kneecaps, in a kick drum. I thought he was insane. But I tried it, and it was one of the best kick drum sounds I'd ever heard, and needed no EQ or compression in the mix. Microphone choice and positioning will make an enormous difference to your recording, and if you get it right, it'll make the mix the easiest thing you've ever done in your life. But how do you get it right? Well, let's ask an engineer with years of experience and hundreds of successful commercial releases to his name. Look, an expert. Hey! If you could give us some top tips about how to record some of the most common instruments, like, for example, an acoustic guitar. How would you approach recording acoustic guitar?
Well, it all depends on the role that the instrument has got in the song. It could be just something in the background. It could be just an acoustic guitar solo, for example. So I tend to do, generally speaking, for example, what I did on Nick's session, on the workshop, was just a coincident pair of condenser, which basically an XY coincident, 90 degrees with the capsule one on top of the other, which guarantees you basically absolute monocompatibility, but also it allows you to change the timbre, because of course you're going to have one mic pointing more to the warmer end of the guitar, shall we say? Right,
the bum end.
Yes, and one more towards the brighter side, so towards the fret. That allows you to change the timbre by balancing the two faders, knowing that you can put them exactly in the same panning position, and yet you can allow it allows you to change the timbre. I'm not scared of mono at all. I do love recording in mono, because sometimes you might not need an acoustic guitar that goes left and right.
Exactly, yeah.
There is just common sense. Listen to the guitar. Some guitars, the average, the famous rule of thumb is that put a condenser on the 12th fret, which is often works absolutely fine. And then you'll find them moving it around, you get more or less bottom end. If it's a classical guitar that doesn't have any headphones, if you think about the way a classical guitarist play, usually they tend to have the guitar quite high up in the frets at 45 degrees.
Yeah.
And by physiologically, your ears are omnidirectional.
Right.
So why don't you put an omnidirectional here?
Yeah.
If they got no headphones, and because that's how they make their own sound effectively.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of common sense and sort of rule of thumbs, if you wish, rules of thumb that people much more brilliant at me than me at this job have worked out in the past. And listen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think so many people don't listen, or they'll come up with an excuse. One guitarist once said to me, well, I'm recording myself at home, so I can't stick a pair of headphones on and move the microphone around on myself because I'm playing the guitar. So I said, well, then put the microphone on a stand and get on a wheelie chair and move yourself around in relationship to the microphone, and then you can hear and then when it sounds great, stop and hit record. Oh yeah, I didn't think of that.
I understand it could be tricky if you've got a tape machine that's as big as a washing machine, but now you can record yourself on a device that's as big as a credit card, effectively. So
exactly,
I think that we are running out of excuses.
Yeah, you can start your DAW from your phone. There's no excuse now.
I'm afraid not.
Yeah. So what about the classic? One of the classic issues is drummers on people that might have home studios or might be recorded in a garage or something like that, and they've got a fairly small room, and drums in a small room is always a nightmare unless it's properly designed and acoustically treated. But let's go back. I'd mentioned earlier about sticking one of these in a bass drum, which to me at the time, I mean, this was probably 2002, something like that. I was like, you can't.
Were they around already? Microphones?
Microphones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, only just. I mean, before that, and that's why I opened a studio, because microphones have been invented. So before that, we were chiseling out lyrics in a stone tablet.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that was it. We did a great album called The Ten Commandments, which did really well. But up until that point, but I mean, condenser microphones when I first started out were the price of a car. Yes, it was Neumann or nothing.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money. But then companies like Rode started to come in and make cheaper stuff that actually sounded really good.
Yeah.
And when this drummer suggested putting a small diaphragm condenser in a kick drum, I assumed through marketing that that's a really stupid idea, because it's got a tiny diaphragm which won't pick up low end, which I've since learned that is rubbish.
Yeah.
And the capsule will be destroyed by the sound pressure levels in the bass drum, which I've since learnt is rubbish.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's try it. And it was the drummer's mic, so I thought, well, if we blow it up, it doesn't matter. So we put his mic in the kick drum, and I just went in the control room and turned the fader up and went, my God, that sounds amazing. And when I first started working with you, one of the things I noticed was that there's always a small diaphragm condenser in the kick drum. Yeah. And I was like, yes, this man is brilliant.
But it was also down to fear back in the days, because as you said, if I were starting now, a 18-year-old, I wouldn't be able to afford these microphones.
Yeah.
So of course I'm more prone to use a microphone that's £50 or $50 or whichever currency you want to use, than one that's just 150.
Yeah.
Because it's the price of 3 current microphones that I got. So I can understand why psychologically people were always worried about this, because you are told they are more delicate, don't blow into them. So of course putting them in front of the biggest source of air in a recording studio, apart from a subwoofer if you've got it, of course you're a bit scared,
nervous,
worried. Of course, understandably. That's where the pop shield comes in.
Exactly.
But in terms of handling pressure, in terms of handling frequency range, I mean, nothing compares to a condenser. The linearity of it, and of course there's better and worse condensers, goes without saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you might think I'm an idiot, and you wouldn't be wrong, if I told you that I put these capsules on a floor tom.
Wow.
It looks like a cotton bud, and I'm putting them on one of the drum set that needs the more bottom end. But the ability of condensers to reproduce the actual sound of the drum kit, or the drums, or the cymbal, or the instrument is second to none, and that's why I love using them. Because to me, if the drummer is good, if the drum kit is good, or apply it to every other instrument, that gives you the real sound. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And that's mainly why I love condensers. They are just a true reproduction of the sound that I'm listening to if I was next door in the library.
I agree. And I used to use all the classic choices and classic budget choices as well. I understand that people might use a 57 on a snare. A 57 is a cheap microphone, and if you're just starting out, you can buy a bunch of them, and it can sound okay on most things, but normally
you get something recorded.
Exactly.
Yes, definitely.
You're making a start. But then if you swap that 57 out for something like this, it's just a different world.
Yes, and there's also the the idea, for example, even translating it to another industry, if you wish to call it like that, live sound. You know,
Yeah.
now there is the myth that you can't use condensers on stage because
Yeah.
the feedback and blah blah blah. My dearest friend Andrea Pellegrini, sorry I bring another Italian into the conversation, is one of the best live sound engineer and studio engineers I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
It's you go on a stage where Andrea is working, is DPA and condensers everywhere. So yeah, there's a few misconceptions and also a few traditions that people were sort of scared to break, you know.
Yeah.
If sometimes even musicians show up and look at you in a bit of a weird way if you put this guy rather than the 57
Exactly.
or you know,
the MD 421 or the classic kind of choices for
you don't have a mic that looks like a manhole cover on the kick drum. Oh, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's got to be a big mic.
Yeah, you know, I always trust, whether it's right or wrong, it's probably the subject of another video. I always trust my ears to tell me, does it sound okay? If I need more than 5 minutes here to get the right sound, I'm doing something wrong, not here.
With the microphone choice or positioning or...
Yes, it's microphone choice, it's positioning. Oh God, positioning is unbelievable, especially on a drum kit. When you got
so
10, 12 mics in the size of a Rubik's cube, and you know. But also, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I'm taking over the Mark Smon special weekly update.
That's fine.
Why would you put a mic this big on a snare?
It's got to sound pretty special, but every mic that's that big has always been maybe not the worst choice for a snare in my experience, but it's been like,
is it worth the comfort?
And then you always get that, but when you crank it at 7K at 15 dB, it sounds just like. It's like, well, I mean, to mine, I'm sort of the same thinking of you. If you've got to crank it 15 dB at 7K, it's the wrong mic.
Yes, there is something wrong somewhere in the chain.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then that's when for your hi-hat you have to load 16 plugins that get rid of the bleed.
That's the other thing. You get that awful spill of the hi-hat in the snare mic. Because the hi-hats, you'll place the enormous snare mic, so you've got limited placement choices because it's enormous.
Yeah.
So you try and get it in the position where it gets the most rejection in the hi-hat, but and that's one thing I found with budget mics, especially budget dynamic mics, is the off-axis response just sounds awful. It's phasey, weird, and horrible.
Yes.
And so you've got your snare, which you've got to crank 15 dB at 7K.
Of course.
And then your phasey, weird hi-hat spill goes right up.
Then you fade up the toms with the usual black mics, and you hear the snare going. And because they don't interact well with each other.
Yeah, and then you just go, mastering engineer can sort that out.
Oh yeah,
and you crack on.
You know that whenever there is something like that going on, at some point after the recording, someone is gonna sweat. You know, there is something that some people are not looking forward to their working days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would if we could summarise your advice in a little bubble?
Yeah.
Of a few sentences, what would it?
Oh God, you're asking me not to talk too much. Wow, that is the biggest challenge I've had to face today. Use good microphones. Use the best microphones you can get, which means also for your budget, of course, because I know I'm in a very privileged position of having great microphones, great desk, most of the times great musicians, and so on and so forth. Yeah, use the best microphones you've got. Spend time placing them. Listen. You know, make sure that you're happy with what comes at the other end of the microphone. Don't worry about how much you can fix it in the mix or wherever. Get it right at the microphone, and then you just have to put the fader up, and it sounds all right. good microphones, good instruments, spend time tuning your guitar, because
Yeah.
I can mic it perfectly, but if it's out of tune, or if I played it and I'm absolute crap on a guitar, there's no point in using the most expensive and the best mics on earth.
Yeah.
So don't fix it in the mix, don't, fix it there and then with the microphone, with the instruments, with the musician. Sometimes as harsh as it might sound, but sometimes it's just not a good musician. A good pianist for a rock and roll track might not be the best pianist for a Beethoven concerto. You know, so
and vice versa.
100%. Yeah. So yeah, good microphones, good equipment. Listen rather than going, oh, I've seen this on YouTube, because that on YouTube might have been a kick drum that's 60 years old.
Exactly.
It's like when at Abbey Road you see people walking in with a Tama drum kit built in 2016, and he would ask you, can you make me sound like Ringo? Well, we are in the same room, but and we have got the same microphone and the same outboard and the same gear, but the source itself is different.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you're not Ringo, so you're gonna play it very differently.
I didn't say the last bit, but yeah. So yeah, instruments choices.
Yeah.
Why do proper guitarists have got 15 guitarists? Yes, they're pervert and they collect them, but also it's because they might need 15 different sounds. So it's a bit trickier if you are a pipe organist to have 16,000 different pipe organs. But yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic advice. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
So the real secret to a great mix is getting it right at source. But what if you're working with multi-tracks that someone else recorded that are out of your control? Well, click on the video that's on your screen now and watch our 2-hour mix masterclass with pop production legend Phil Harding to find out.